Welcome once again to another episode of Strange Planet. Thanks, as always, for sticking me in your ear. We are off on a wild paranormal adventure on this episode. Graham Phillips is a British author. He's also worked as a reporter for BBC Radio. He's the author of co-author of a number of books, including The Green Stone, The Eye of Fire, King Arthur, The True Story, The Shakespeare Conspiracy, Robin Hood, The Man Behind the Myth, The Search for the Grail, um, The Marian Conspiracy, The Moses Legacy, The Templars and the Ark of the Covenant, Merlin and the Discovery of Avalon in the New World, The End of Eden, Wisdom Keepers of Stonehenge, and his latest, co-authored by Jody Russell, is called Strange Fate, an extraordinary true story of paranormal discovery. Graham Phillips, welcome to Strange Planet. How are you?
Very well, thank you, and thank you for having me on.
Let's begin with this remarkable artifact, which is at the heart of the story. It's the heart of the rose. Just describe sort of physically what this heart of the rose artifact is.
Well, it's a small stone. It's about 2 inches long, 2 inches wide, and about 3/4 of an inch thick, made from a rose quartz, and it's shaped into the shape of a heart. In legend, it was supposedly made by an ancient Greek goddess, but somehow it came to Britain, where the Celts possessed it. And in the time that King Arthur is said to have lived, which is around 500 AD, after the Romans left Britain, it ended up with the last of the Druid priestesses. The Druids were the Celtic priesthood. They were kind of suppressed by the Romans, but by the time the Romans left, Christianity was taking over. So the last of them pretty much were gone. And the last of these priestesses, whose name was Morgana, who seemed to have been behind the legend of Morgan Le Fay, Arthur's sister and sorceress in the King Arthur story, it ended up supposedly with her. And it was buried. We didn't know this at the time when we started to research for the book, but it was supposed to be buried in her tomb, which was a burial mound not far from the centre of England in moorland called the Peak District. And there it was hidden in her tomb when she died in the early 500s. And it was later sought and found by a group that came from nearby called the Order of Meonia, who were a mystical society.
What properties or what are the legends associated with the heart of the rose? What did it have? I don't know, supernatural qualities?
Yeah, it was said to have the power to influence fate, fortune, and, well, change the future in some way. It was the Romans called the woman who created it Fortuna, from where the name fortune comes from. And so it's basically said to be able to influence fortune. So it was a pretty highly sought after artifact.
And as you mentioned, it is discovered by this occult society, the Order of Meonia, in the moors of England. And well, tell us a little bit about this occult secret society, if you will.
Well, it was in some ways no different to many other secret societies of people that were founded in the second half of the 19th century. It's known as the Gothic Revival or the Occult Revival because there suddenly became an interest in spiritualism started then. Mm. There were many other occult groups being founded. There was psychic research got going, people serious investigating what ghosts and paranormal phenomena might be. And during this period, there were quite a few of these groups, but this Order of Meonia was the first of these groups, or certainly one of the first, that was founded in the early 1850s. Now, they had their headquarters at a big Victorian mansion called Biddulph Grange, which is only a couple of miles from where this tomb was. And the fact that this tomb was actually on their property, on the Biddulph estate, the people who owned the property, a family called the Batemans, who were very rich industrialists, and their neighbors who were close friends, and also they were in partnership in various businesses called the Heaths. They were at the center of this group. But basically, I suppose in some ways it was no different from other groups at the time. They went in search of things like the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant, you name it, King Arthur's Excalibur, any of these famous artifacts they went in search of. Now, most of you have never heard of the Heart of the Rose today, but back in the 19th century, it was pretty popular, pretty famous. It was actually made famous by Bram Stoker, the man who created Dracula's story. Anyway, the way it was found, it's what makes the Order of Meonia so different from the other groups, because the person who found it was the daughter of one of these families, the Heath family, who lived not far away from Biddulph Grange, by a girl called Mary Ann Heath. Mary was only 7.5 when she found it. Now, apparently, according to all accounts, she was just a normal little girl. And they decided, the families, to start doing an archaeological dig at this big burial mound where Morgana was supposed to be buried. The person doing the dig was a professional archaeologist. He was the cousin of James Bateman, the man who owned Biddulph Grange. So it was all very proper. And while they were all there, it was just the families were there, the children were playing around the area. Mary was one of them. And just as they kind of opened up the entrance to this tomb, it was a big mound about 40 feet across, 10 feet high. They dug into it, and she suddenly went and crawled inside. And they obviously were saying, Mary, Mary, come out, come out. When she came out, all the stories say, all the accounts at the time say, she came out with extraordinary powers. She came out being what we would today call psychic. She started telling people that things about themselves she couldn't have possibly known. But what she said was, when she went into this she crawled through this opening into this hillock. When she got inside, there was a burial chamber. She said that in there she found this stone, and it did match exactly what the Heart of the Rose was supposed to look like. It was all covered in dirt, but when they cleaned it up, it was what they hoped to find. So then, I mean, people were saying, she can't suddenly be psychic, how can she, some people were saying, oh, she's just making lucky guesses when she tells people about themselves. But then she said, all right, I'll prove it. If you go to about 2 miles south of where Biddulph Grange is, there's an old ruined chapel. If you dig in a particular place, and she showed them where to do it under the earth, you will find that there's a slab there. And if you have it removed, you'll find an underground crypt with some amazing things in it. And she was right. They actually found a lot of Knights Templar gravestones there, plus various lead boxes, and inside apparently were old documents about the occult and mysteries and all those sort of things dating back to the Middle Ages. And well, this firstly made Mary Heath really quite sort of sought after by everybody. I mean, how did she suddenly get these powers? And secondly, it was what started the group, because once she'd been able to find this Heart of the Rose, which they believed could change fate, and they'd found all these boxes full of ancient occult texts, that's what made them decide, let's get the Order of Meonia going. They called it the Order of Meonia because, well, the bottom line is Meonia is an anagram for I am one. They believe that all sorts of different things of the past, occult, magic from ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, it was all basically different paths to the same thing. So that's how the group got going.
Remarkable story. Did the Heaths and the Batemans, did they buy their property because they believed it was in proximity of the remains of Morgana and perhaps the tomb where they would find the heart of the stone, or was it just happenstance?
It was just happenstance. They had nothing to do with the occult before this. It was the Batemans that owned it first. In 1870, I think it was, the Batemans sold it to the Heaths because they were running out of money. But the original them going there was seemingly completely coincidental, or was it? Was some higher force driving them? But certainly once they got there, they realized there was a lot of sacred places on their land. I mean, first of all, there was this tomb, then there was this old chapel that had belonged to the Knights Templars, and then you'd got the fact that there were other ancient monuments like small stone circles, other mounds and things all around where they were building this. They built this house. There was just virtually nothing there beforehand. And they found that there was quite a lot of these ancient sacred Celtic and pre-Celtic sites on their land. And what was amazing is that what they decided to do was to start building new shrines on the location of where these older sacred sites were. And they didn't, remember I said that they tended to believe, presumably either because of what little Mary had told them in her psychic state, or what they discovered in these various documents they found in this crypt. They believed that the different forms of ancient mysticism were all paths to the same thing. They built a Roman temple under the house and erected a statue of this woman I was saying called Fortuna there. I said she was a goddess. She wasn't so much as a goddess. She was more of a demigod, a human with godlike powers. The ancient Greeks called her Omphale, but they called her Fortuna. So they built this Roman temple to her underneath the Grange itself. And another site there, they built a mock Egyptian tomb that was pretty much, it looks pretty much like an Egyptian tomb when you go in. It's quite sizable. They also built a Chinese sanctuary, a pagoda, and other pools and things around that. And then they built a Celtic sanctuary, which consisted of a sacred spring and little rivers and kind of like a recreated tomb. So they were building all these things, but they were all supposed to have had the same purpose. There was Fortuna in one. In the one that's the Egyptian temple, they had a godlike being called the Ape of Thoth, or Arne. He is supposed to have been the lord of fate and fortune in ancient Egypt. So he's the same thing, but for Egypt, what right. Fortuna is to the Romans. In the Chinese temple, they had a statue of somebody called the Lady of the Moon in Chinese mythology. Her name is, I think I'm pronouncing it right, Chang'e. So she is in charge in the ancient Chinese tradition, in charge of fate, fortune, and destiny. And they did something similar in the Celtic shrine. There was an ancient lady or demigoddess called Bride or Brigitte, and they had a statue to her. So it seems that they built 4 separate shrines on the land, all for somehow influencing fate and fortune.
The Heath family then, and the Order of Meonia that was in possession of the Heart of the Rose, what did they do with it? And I mean, were people flocking to the mansion on the moors to visit this artifact and the various monuments?
Yeah, quite a few famous people got involved in this. There was people that, if anybody knows much about occult history, there's a woman called Florence Farr, who was a famous actress and also a member of another famous occult group called the Golden Dawn. She became part of it. I mentioned Bram Stoker, the creator of Dracula. He got involved. There was a lot of other famous people, plus primarily a lot of pre-Raphaelite painters. They were the kind of bohemian hippies of the day. And there were people like Gabriel Rossetti was involved, and a man called Edward Burne-Jones. They're quite well-known painters. They became involved in this. So it became a kind of society thing, really. I mean, it had to be, because anybody else had to work, and they hadn't got the time to get involved in all this kind of stuff. But we did very little. I mean, Jodie and I had to put together the whole thing like a massive jigsaw puzzle, because the problem was in 1897, or at least that's what we thought at first. In 1897, there was a fire that engulfed Biddulph Grange, and nearly every document associated with this, plus family correspondence, was destroyed in the fire. So little is known. It's known how it started, but what they actually did and whether they were successful in whatever they intended to do, and any weird things that happened to them, we couldn't find any evidence for this because it had all been destroyed. So our quest really started with the search for, well, what did the Order of Meonia do, and were they successful?
And when you say were they successful, do you mean to say that they intended to use the heart of the stone to change history, change the nature of reality?
Well, it seems it. It didn't take us too long to discover what they wanted to do. Most of the people involved in the group were women, and they were also some of the first feminists, the beginning of what they call first wave feminism, which started in the 1850s. In fact, in one of them, I mean, the stone was found in 1851 on May the 4th, actually, is this precise date. The group got going shortly after that. At that very time, one of the people involved with the group, a woman called Barbara Beauchamp, she actually started the first feminist magazine. And she started really working towards women's rights. So did Maria Bateman, whose husband owned the property. And a lot of these people were all feminists. Now, going back then, women had, and this is in the most advanced Western countries, had absolutely no rights at all, no matter how rich they were. Weren't allowed to inherit property, to own their own property, to start or run businesses. They were pretty much they themselves were the property of their husband's father's brother or some sort of guardian, and they had absolutely no rights. Now, they were obviously, on the one hand, working towards this. They started groups off, they started magazines and things like this. And it started to have an effect. People began to copy them in the United States and in places like elsewhere in the British Empire, places like Australia and New Zealand, and elsewhere in Europe. So it started to work, but for any rights to really change, it meant that men who were in Parliament or in Congress or ruling the various countries throughout the world had to pass legislation to allow women to have rights. How are you going to persuade them to do this? And this is where I think their thinking is. They bring in the sort of mystical side. If we can change the minds of certain men, enlighten them to some degree, enough to vote through changes, then maybe we can make this work. And what's astonishing, within a couple of decades, women throughout a lot of Western countries started getting all sorts of rights they'd never had before. They're allowed to own property, allowed to start businesses, allowed to inherit, and so forth. So maybe it was just a complete fluke, but men in power started to agree with them. And that surely can't just have been through these magazines and these little groups that were going. It makes me think that maybe they did influence fate in some way for the better.
So the heart of the rose disappears. Is it as a result of the fire that we lose track of this artifact? What happened to it?
Well, when the fire took place in the late 1890s, the groups disbanded. I think a lot of what they'd achieved, they hadn't got the rights to vote by this time. That kind of came during the First World War. But so many of these other, rites they had achieved. So maybe they thought it was time to stop. Maybe they were going to, getting a bit old by this point. I mean, being somewhere like the age of 70, which most of these women that wear by this time was pretty old in those times. I mean, I'm 70 now. I don't consider myself to be that old, really. But back then, it was like being close to 100 or something. But so maybe this is why it stopped. But the final thing was there was a fire. The house was severely damaged, and the group stopped. Now, they had this Heart of the Rose. We discovered that a memorial pamphlet that basically was in memory of one of these people in the group. In fact, Mary Heath, a little girl that when she grew up, she actually became the head of the group for a while. So it was a 25-year memorial service for her. And in this little private paper that was published up, or pamphlet, if you like, program, it basically talks about the Heart of the Rose being hidden by one of them, and that this was hidden, and it basically seemed to suggest there were clues that had been left to lead to it for someone who maybe should find it in the future. Now, the person who hid this, eventually we discovered, was quite a famous artist, an artist model by the name of Jane Morris. She was married to the William Morris who made famous wallpaper. Jane Morris was an astonishing girl. I mean, she was born into a very poor family. She self-educated. She educated herself. She became an accomplished pianist. She could speak 5 languages. She could pass in high society. In fact, so famous did she become that the playwright George Bernard Shaw based the character for Pygmalion on her, which is what's known as My Fair Lady on the stage. So right. She is the Eliza Doolittle, My Fair Lady. She was the one who is supposed to have hidden it and left clues.
Okay. So this is where you and your co-author Jody Russell, I guess, decide you want to discover the new location of the Heart of the Rose. First of all, maybe tell us a little bit about your co-author.
Okay, well, Jody and myself have been researching quite a lot of other mysteries together over the years. She comes from the States. She lives in LA. I'm from central England, which might be fairly obvious as all my research is around here, in a place called Birmingham. Jody comes from LA, and we got to know each other years ago while investigating. She was interested in the Robin Hood legend. I'd just written a book about it. We started corresponding. That was before the days of the internet. She came over, we investigated that. We were also involved in, you mentioned earlier about the book, The Search for the Ark of the Covenant. We were both involved with that story. So we'd done quite a lot of things together. And she used to come to England quite often for a bit of a holiday. And, I'd normally take her to various sites about historical mysteries that I was looking into. And I mentioned to her about this, the reason being, because the part that this place that used to be a private home and its grounds had been reopened to the public and restored to its former glory. And it was owned by the National Trust, which is a British organisation that refurbishes and opens old stately homes to the public. She came over. I said it had been reopened. There was places in the gardens I'd love her to see. Would she like to come and see it? So she came over for that reason. I told her about this Heart of the Rose. It's something I've been looking into for years. She said, why don't we go in search of it? And that's how our adventure started.
We'll pick up on that point on the other side. Graham Phillips is co-author of Strange Fate, an extraordinary true story of paranormal discovery in search of the artifact, the Heart of the Rose, when Strange Planet returns right after this timeout. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship. Enjoy the complete unedited episodes and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. And we are back with Graham Phillips, British author, former BBC radio reporter, and founding editor of Strange Phenomena magazine. That's going back to 1979. We're talking about his new book, co-authored with Jody Russell, called Strange Fate, an extraordinary true story of paranormal discovery. So take me, sort of walk us through it as you and Jody begin your research and your attempt to rediscover the location of the Heart of the Stone artifact. This takes you back to the mansion, I'm presuming. What did you see? What did you feel when you were on the grounds?
Well, to start off with, nothing really. I took Jodie around. I showed her the location, and I said, why don't we go to the tomb, which is only a couple of miles away, where this Heart of the Rose Stone was discovered by little Mary Heath when she was 7 years old. So we went there. Now, since the time that Mary Heath was alive, since the mid-1800s, the place has been completely ransacked. There is no mound anymore. All there is a kind of a central burial chamber, a stone chamber, which is about, I don't know, 20 feet long, 6 feet wide, about 5 or 6 feet high, with no roof to it. But it's made up of stones. You can see that it was once a burial chamber. There's a couple of big stones standing nearby. So it's still worth seeing. And you can just go there. It's on kind of public land. So we went to have a look at this. And I'd been there before, and nothing interesting had happened, and I hadn't come up with any new insights. But while we were there, and it was literally only within minutes of us arriving there, it had been a perfectly nice day with sunshine, and suddenly the rain started pouring. There was this massive cloud right over us. It poured, it thundered, it lightninged, if you can, or it did lightning. There was thunder and lightning. And I mean, I know everybody knows Britain for its bad weather, but that's just drizzly rain. The kind of thunderstorms that you get in the States or anywhere in North America, they just don't happen here, really. I mean, occasionally thunder and lightning and rain coming down as if it's coming down from a hose pipe or something. But it was like that. But the weird thing is, when we looked up, that you could see that there was like the cloud was pretty much just over us, and there was still sunshine all around in the hillsides. And it was just weird. Now, this lasted for about 5 minutes. We were running for cover. And then it just stopped. And I said, that is so weird that should just suddenly have happened. After that, we went back to Biddulph Grange. And we actually noticed, I mean, I'd been filming the whole thing during this time. And we noticed that while I was filming Jodie running for cover, this kind of ball of light sort of shot across and zoomed over the road that's opposite and over a fence. And it really looked, it didn't look like lens flare. It was something was happening. I showed it to an expert later who said it wasn't lens flare, but it could have been some electromagnetic effect because of the storm. It could have even, but I didn't notice anything at the time, and neither did Jodie. It could have been a phenomenon known as ball lightning. But whatever was going on, there was an electrical storm right over this tomb for just 5 minutes while we were there. Anyway, that was pretty interesting. When we went back to Biddulph Grange, and it was still open, and we'd been talking to a lady there, one of the guides, about this fire in the house in 1897. And we went back and we wanted to know, Jodie wanted to know something else about it. And so she asked about the fire, said, when the fire occurred in 1897. And the lady said, oh, no, you've got it wrong there. It's 1896. And we said, no, it is 1897. You've actually got it on one of your information boards there, a photograph of the place after the fire, plus the date underneath it. And Jodie went over there and suddenly stopped and stared at me and said, what? She pointed, it now said 1896. And I thought, this is bonkers. I've always known it's 1897. I even had a copy of a book I'd written about it years ago called The Green Stone. About that included, it wasn't the whole story of Biddulph Grange, but it included Biddulph Grange in this story. And in there, I'd got 1897 as I thought. But we looked through all the guidebooks in the bookshop at Biddulph Grange, and they were all saying 1896. And I thought, have I got it wrong all these years?
The Mandela effect. It's the Mandela effect.
Well, yeah, the Mandela effect, where people have got a shared memory of something which is wrong. And Jodie said, well, no, I've been doing research too. But what was weird is we started speaking to a number of other people who'd done quite in-depth research into Biddulph Grange, to do, and people who were historians at universities, and they too had all got the year 1897. And they said, we kind of all got it wrong. So we put it down in the end to, as you said, the Mandela effect. But what happened then is that something happened that's really so weird. And we didn't actually put this in the book, so I don't normally talk about this one, but it perfectly illustrates just how weird things became. We'd gone to see a house nearby, which didn't have anything to do with Biddulph Grange, actually. It was some other investigation we were doing. And it was a boarded up house. It was a very strange story. There was supposed to be ghosts there and everything else. And we went to have a look at it for that reason. It was partly boarded up, but the guy who actually looked after the property could show you around, and he did. He showed us around, and we filmed in there. We filmed him and talking about it, and so on. He said, well, I can't show you all of it now. I want to get you into the cellars, but if you come back in a couple of weeks. So we were going back. We'd phoned him up the day before, and he said, yeah, come along, no problem, I can let you in. So we went back there to have a look at this old place, and we arrived at his doorstep, and he said, yes, hello. I said, yeah, okay, Graham and Jodie, you're going to show us around. And he said, sorry, who are you? He didn't remember who we were. And yet we'd been there about 2 weeks before. And so we said, look, you've shown us around this place. He said, no, it's not me. You must be thinking of somebody else. Anyway, you can't even get in there. And I said, well, and he said, well, I'll show you where it is. And we said, okay. We thought, well, maybe he's been drinking a bit too much or something, or been eating magic mushrooms. Who knows? So we went and had a look at this house. And now it was totally boarded up, so boarded up, in fact, that there are all these metal shutters over all the windows that had all rusted up. They'd clearly been there for years. And he said, no, I never took you in. You can't go inside. You can see the outside. And I said, we were inside with you. Look. And I actually had the film on my phone and showed him himself showing us around. That really freaked him out. And he basically didn't hang around anyway. Oh, well, you've seen the place now, so off you go off. He literally didn't know we were. But not only is it his memory that had gone, the place had changed. You could see there was no way that place had been opened up for years. So it was at that point we began to think, have we somehow jumped universes?
Is that connected in that manner that you went, that abandoned manor? How is it connected, if at all, to the Grange manor?
In no way whatsoever. That's the strange thing. But as the weeks went by, we began to find out that other strange things had happened, like we'd jump universes. I mean, that's the only thing we could think of like universe swaps. But we thought, well, I mean, that's just nuts. But if we had swapped universes, how come I still had this footage? Was it because I had the phone with me? But I was in the same clothes. I wasn't suddenly wearing different clothes or jumped into another version of me. And there wasn't two of me running around. It didn't seem to make any sense. But other things happened. Like on one occasion, there was a pub we were going to go to, an inn, a bar that had been called the Mermaid for years. And we were going to go to this Mermaid pub. Again, that was connected with the story. We went there, only to find when we got there, it was no longer called the Mermaid, but the Old Oak. When we got inside, we said, why is this called the Old Oak now? When did you change the name? It's always been called the Old Oak. We looked online, everything said it was called the Old Oak, always had been, never was the Mermaid. But when we had this universe jump, it seemed to be a different one, because we were driving to somewhere where we've eventually traced where we thought this stone was, the eye of the heart of the rose, and we were driving over these moorlands, and suddenly this fog came down. We could hardly see anything. We were in the fog for about 5 minutes, drove out the other side, arrived at this pub, the Mermaid, now the Old Oak. We got inside, and we thought, well, we were going there for some lunch. So we said, right, can we have lunch? They said, well, you better hurry up. We're closing in a minute. We said, I thought you stayed open until 3 for food. It's only 12 o'clock. I said, no, it's 5 to 3. What? We'd lost 3 hours. We couldn't account for it. I mean, as far as that, we'd never been abducted by a UFO or anything. This was somehow connected with what we were doing. Time jumps, universe jumps. And it was only later, when we did further research and we found more information about the Meonia group, if this is exactly what they were claiming had happened to them on a few occasions, and all these various gods and goddesses or beings that they had as statues in these shrines in the garden weren't just associated with fate, fortune, but with altering reality. So had this, because we hadn't even found the stone at this point. We hadn't done any rituals, or all we'd done is go to sites that thousands of other people go to every year.
Strange fate on Strange Planet. And it's getting stranger and stranger. Back with more of my conversation with Graham Phillips right after this. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. We are back with Graham Phillips, co-author of Strange Fate, an extraordinary true story of paranormal discovery, along with his co-author, Jody Russell. So what about the disappearing people, vanishing people?
Oh, no, that's another weird channel of things. It's people who appear and then disappear during the course of the search. What we discovered in the end was that this woman called Jane Morris, who was the inspiration for Eliza Doolittle, the My Fair Lady. She'd had a friend of hers who was an artist, a woman called Evelyn de Morgan, had done a number of paintings of her. And it was in these paintings that the clues were. I won't bother going into the whole details of that, but there were clues in these paintings as to where she'd hidden this stone. We went along to one of these places, and while we were there, I'll have to go back a little bit. We went to another place to have a look at something in a museum. It's connected with the whole story of the Meonia group, but it's a bit complicated, so I won't go into it, other than to say we went to have a look at a small sword that had been found under unusual circumstances, and it was on display in this museum.
Mm-hmm.
Jodie and I were there because I was connected with the people who had found the sword. I was actually there when it was found. The curators and the others who worked in the museum were fascinated to talk to me. So there was, I don't know, about 7 of us talking together. And we were saying, oh, it's quite interesting about the sword and how it was found. And suddenly this guy came up and told us something that I had got no idea of. And apparently nobody else who worked in the museum knew. Apparently the man who had made the sword originally was a guy that some of you may have heard of called Dr. John Dee, who was an Elizabethan astrologer and occultist.
The inspiration for 007.
Was he?
Yes. Yes, he was.
Oh, he was. Yes, he was. He was one of the first spy for in the English Secret Service.
And the 007 is a pair of spectacles, a pair of glasses, meaning for your eyes only. And that's what he was selling.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Yeah, but he was in the English Secret Service when he first got going. He was spying on Catholics for the Protestant regime of Queen Elizabeth.
That's right.
Well, I never. Thanks for telling me that one. Anyway, going back to him, 007,
mm-hmm.
John Dee, had founded, had made this sword. Suddenly, this little old man, I mean, he really looked old. I mean, I'm old, but this guy was old. And this a scruffy black suit, kind of reminded me sort of an old Columbo, you know, remember Columbo?
Oh, yes, a favorite.
And he was like this. And he sort of came over and he was, although he spoke in an English accent, he said, oh, of course, this is where John Dee lived, isn't it? We said, is it? In this, it turned out that he did actually live in this museum where the sword had completely ended up by chance. It wasn't there because he had lived there. In fact, the people who ran the museum didn't even know he had anything to do with the place. Anyway, so that was weird. He told us about this. And then I said to him, well, tell us some more. What else do you know? And he just sort of wandered off into the next gallery. And I sort of went after him saying, excuse me, can you tell me? And he'd gone. He wasn't there. And the fact there was no other way out of that gallery. And us plus the other people who were all there, who all saw him, were kind of searching around for ages, trying to figure out where he'd gone. Anyway, a couple of weeks later, Jodie and I are looking at this painting that's got some of these clues in as to where the heart of the rose is hidden. We go there, we're looking at the painting, suddenly this little old man's there again. Oh, yes, do you know that painting was painted by... And he tells us something that's essential for us to know to do with the search. And I'm saying, hey, hold on a minute, you're that. And he wanders off again, goes into a crowd of people that are being shown around by a guide and vanishes. I follow him. You know, we can't find him anywhere. Jodie and I both saw him. Other people there were too busy listening to a guide to actually say that they saw him, but nobody took tell where he went. He went into a room that there seemingly was no way out of except for the way in, and he had vanished again. So occasionally, there's not just him, there's a few others as well. People who appeared out of nowhere, told us something, then we suddenly think, hold on, who the heck are they? We follow them and they vanish. Who are these people? I mean, is it something to do with the, you know, some fate itself, bringing people from other universes to help us out, then sending them back again? In which case, how do they know what they've got to tell us? I mean, the whole thing is so mysterious, we can't really answer these questions.
It reminds me of the Rowan Atkinson character in Love Actually, who I don't know if you've seen the movie or um, anyway, he just suddenly appears and he's like steering the hand of fate, I guess, if you will, and then he disappears and then he comes back at another appropriate time. Anyway, it's so let me ask you, you talk about that you were in a race against time to locate the heart of the stone. What do you mean by that? Why would time was running out? Running out of
Yeah,
what?
well, basically, I mean, again, it's quite a long story, but I'll keep to a very, very short version of it. We had to find it by the exact 150th anniversary. What do you call the anniversary of somebody's death? Their death day, not birthday. Anyway, it had to be exactly, we had to find it by 150 years to the day after Mary Heath, the
Yes.
girl who found it, had died. And that was the 13th of October last year, 2022. So that's what the race against time of. We pretty much we weren't actually top. Jodie kept getting a lot of sort of strange dreams or visions that said that if we would continue to get help in by people appearing and disappearing and other universe jumps or whatever to help find this stone, but after the date, and don't ask me why, after sundown on the day that Mary Heath had died, 150 years after, if we hadn't found it, all of this stuff would stop and we wouldn't get any more help and there's no way we would find it. So that's the kind of race against time. It wasn't there was people after us with hatchets or something, you know, it was basically that. And so in the end, we discovered by solving all these clues that they all led to a cave which is in the moorlands not far from Biddulph Grange. And it's a cave which is associated with the legend of King Arthur. The knight Gawain is supposed to have met there with Morgana, the very character whose tomb it was that where this heart of the rose was discovered, the figure that is supposed to have had this heart of the rose. And Gawain sees her in a vision, or he sees her appearing with wings in front of him like an angel almost. And then he gets whatever wishes after in the story of King Arthur. One of these pre-Raphaelite painters who was involved in the story of Meonia, he painted a picture of this event, Gawain with this angel-like figure who's Morgana in a cave. And the actual cave where he painted this picture is known as Wetton Mill in the Peak District of Staffordshire, north of where Biddulph is. And so we went there. It's known locally as being the place where the story was set. And that's why this guy painted it there. When we got there, we thought, how on earth are we going to find, you know, this stone here? You know, where's it going to be? In a cave, it could be anywhere. The cave itself was a pretty big cavern, and there's a great big hole in the roof, I don't know, about 40 feet across, where obviously at some point in the past, the roof had collapsed, the cavern roof had collapsed. And we were looking around, our attention was drawn to one area of the cave where there was this kind of V-shaped recess that kind of went all the way up to the roof, or where this opening was. And there was like this buzzing sound, like bees coming from it. We couldn't figure it out. Anyway, suddenly the rain started again, and it had been sunshining outside just like it was when we started this quest. And the rain poured down, and within seconds, it was literally pouring in through the roof, like in small little waterfalls or cascades coming down. The lightning started, the wind was howling about outside. And then when the lightning went, it did appear that on the wall behind where this one cascade of water was, it was obviously created by the shadows of the trees that are above around this opening and the rocks and that. It looked for all the world like there was an angel standing there, like somebody with big wings, like in this painting. And then it went, and within a few minutes, the rain stopped and it dried out. And well, it didn't dry out, but, you know, we weren't getting soaked anymore. And within a few minutes, the water had run away on the floor. And we looked down, and I think Jodie noticed it first. Lying on the floor was this stone, this small stone in the shape of a heart, pink, later we discovered made of of rose quartz. And it was exactly the size and shape of what the heart of the rose had looked like. And we realized that what had happened is somebody at some point in the past had fitted it into this crevice right high up in the side of the cave. And unless you knew what you were looking for, an abseil down from the top, or had a proper big ladder or something, you'd never have gone up there and looked for it. But the rain had coincidentally washed this thing down, and it literally landed at our feet. So that is how we found what some people have said, oh, well, it's probably something just left there by a visitor, it's an offering by a new ager. Well, it's a bit strange that it was exactly what we were looking for at exactly the right time, and the way it just appeared.
So what did you do with it?
Well, we took it to the actual land, the people who owned the land. We took it to them that were, part of the National Trust setup. So it's big setup. They said that they weren't interested in it. It wasn't worth anything. It was just rose quartz. There was no way of it wasn't expensive or anything like that. They said that the way we found it, well, it's probably just been left there by somebody. You may as well keep it. We had it examined by a good few people who were interested in perhaps its mystical significance. Nothing happened to them. And since that time to now, nothing's happened to us either. So don't ask me what it was all about. It makes an interesting story, and it shows that somehow weird things can happen, far weirder than anyone would normally imagine. But what it was all for, well, perhaps we've got to wait for the next thing to happen before we find that out.
Well, keep us posted. Maybe you should take it to the resting place of Mary Heath.
That's another story. Her resting place vanished.
Her resting place vanished.
Her entire resting place wasn't there. Then it came. Then it went. That's another story.
Yeah, sounds like volume 2 of Strange Fate. I have a sneaking suspicion, Graham, that this story is not over yet. But it was great.
The heart of the rose is in America at the moment. Jodie's got it. It's in LA, of all places, the city of angels.
Wonderful, wonderful. How do we get a copy of Strange Fate?
Well, it's available on Amazon. Jodie and I published this one ourselves. I didn't go to my normal publisher because we wanted to get it out quick, and they'd have taken longer. So it's just available on Amazon. But any Amazon UK, Amazon.com America, you'll find it. Strange Fate by Graham Phillips and Jodie Russell.
Fantastic. What an incredible story. Graham, great to finally connect with you, and I'm so delighted that we could spend some time together. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Hey there, and welcome once again to another edition of Strange Planet. Thanks, as always, for sticking me in your ear. And if you'd like to get deeper into Strange Planet, you know what to do. Just click on that link in the episode description, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. There are 3 monthly subscription programs to choose from. Choose the one that makes sense for you. You gain access to commercial-free listening. No commercials. You get bonus episodes, special bonus episodes created, produced, and packaged just for you. And you get a subscription to my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum. strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. All right. Well, over the past almost, 23, 24 years, I've been doing this on radio, on podcasts. And when people ask me, what's your favorite subject? This is always at the very top or near the very top, time travel. I love to talk about time travel, and we're going to do that over the next 45 minutes to an hour right now. And we're actually going to see a time travel device. For those of you who are watching this podcast on Rumble, you'll get to actually see it. And the Rumble channel is Richard Serrett's Strange Planet. But for those of you who are listening, we'll do our best to describe it with as much detail as we can. Augie Nost is with us. He's the author of Spiritual Science, Higher Consciousness Thinking, and How to Access the Universal Consciousness. By age 25, he'd learned several languages, studied science, including metaphysics and different forms of theories of spirituality. At age 25, he left Norway to go to the United States, to go to flight school at Emory School of Aviation in Greeley, Colorado, where he obtained numerous pilot licenses. He co-wrote a book titled Alien Encounters in America's Midwest, which featured hidden government documents on the cover-up of the UFO issue, NASA prints of buildings and structures on our moon, and personal testimonies from people who have had contact with extraterrestrials. With his partner, Nori Love, they've created a mastermind for meditation and manifestation of the future we'd like to see. And you can watch their YouTube program. It's called Broadcast Team Alpha, and we've linked up to it again in the episode notes. Just click on that link. Augie Nost, welcome back to Strange Planet. How are you?
Well, thank you. Thank you. I am wonderful. I just don't know any other way to do it.
Excellent. Excellent. You were involved in a BBC TV documentary about time travel with the great theoretical physicist Michio Kaku. Tell me about that.
Yeah, gosh, that was 20 years ago this year. That was back when I was hosting and producing 2 TV shows in Tucson. And I interviewed Michio Kaku there once also. But I interviewed a guy that made a time travel device that I have. And it got very interesting. And BBC television found out about this TV show. And they called. And they told me that we're coming to the US to do a TV documentary on time travel. And they told us there was, who was going to be in it. And they invited me to come and join them. So I agreed, and we went to New Orleans and we did the shoot. And on that TV documentary, I explained a little bit about this time travel device. I demonstrated it so they could see what it looked like. And I told a little bit about my experiences with it, because I had some strange experiences with it that if you talk to an average person on the street, their eyes will glaze over and they walk away on you. But these things did really happen. And it proves to me that there is more to this mind that we have. Because my observation of this device is that it is a mind-matter interface device. Because I kept doing what the guy that made it, doing what he told me, and I couldn't get anything done. Nothing worked for me until I started manipulating my brainwave pattern, slowing that down into the bottom of the alpha range, around 7.4, or somewhere in there. Then I started seeing things. I started knowing things. And I was mostly by myself when this worked. And this was already back in Omaha before I came to Tucson. And there were things that I discovered. One, let me tell you one of the experiences, which was the first one I saw. And that was, I saw myself walking down the street, and there were people coming the other way. And it appeared to me as they could see me because they walked out, they stepped aside when I came walking down the street, and I walked up. It kind of really just, I don't know if I should say scared me, but it was really alarming. And I walked up to a newspaper stand, those, you got a bunch of newspapers stacked in there and you can pull one out. I walked up there and I looked on the headlines and I looked on the date. And I remember the date was about 6 months in the future. And that is when they wrote about things that evidently was supposed to happen. And I came back, and that was the only thing that I went through at that time. I came back, and I remember making some notes. There was some things about political things, and there were, I think there was a couple of other things that I had written down. And I remember, not all of that happened. Only one of those things happened. There was some accident somewhere that had happened, but otherwise, the other political things didn't happen. And that puzzled me also, because if I had seen it, it should have happened, right? But I started to discover that there is more than one timeline. Mm-hmm. I was in a timeline at that time that was represented from what I allowed to be in my mind. And I was all on my TV shows, the paranormal, yes, but also political corruption and all the stuff, the illegal stuff that the government did, both locally and in the state and federal. I covered it. And that's where my mind was. So what I'm thinking is that I probably had created that timeline where I saw that thing in the newspaper stand. And afterwards, I must have changed timeline and I ended up in a different one. And that is where later on, one timeline that I much later discovered was in one timeline that came out of 2016 that I was not in, and I'm glad I wasn't. That was when Hillary won the presidency.
I don't blame you. I wouldn't want to be in that timeline either.
Yeah.
Let me ask you though, a couple of sort of basic fundamental questions here. First of all, when we're talking about time travel right now, are we talking about traveling in time in our mind, or are you talking about actual physical time travel, where you physically are transported to another timeline?
That is one that I'm still wondering about. When I was walking down the street that time, I could see people stepping out of my way. I don't know if that was mental or if it was physical. I kind of suspect that it may have been physical because they moved out of my way when I was walking down the street. So unless I was looking at them in their mental state, but then again, as an astral traveler, I know what the mental state looked like. It is more fuzzy. These were accurately detailed people. So I think it may have been an actual physical, and because that's what the maker of the time travel device says you really can do with it. And I know that happens because there have been people that bought the machine and they tried it out and they've been doing it and they're missing.
Oh, all right. Well, we'll get into that for sure.
Yeah.
Before we do that, though, I want to ask you the other fundamental question, which is not an easy question, and that is, what is time?
Yeah, what is time? Well, we think we know what time is because, well, we see it, right? We remember things from yesterday. I'm sitting here talking to you today, and I am envisioning and hoping for things to happen tomorrow. That's our timeline. But when it comes to time itself, there are physicists coming out saying that there is actually no scientific evidence that time actually exists. Now, these are theoretical physicists that have a lot of credibility coming out saying that. But there is another thing that I had. I had an incredible experience about a little over 8 years ago when the universe was downloaded to me in meditation. I got the thing you downloaded in concept and detail. One of the things that I was shown was time. And what I was shown is that time is a mental construct in order for us to be able to separate yesterday from today and tomorrow. It's straight the experiences outside of the physical sitting there in the quantum existence as one globule or one entity. In order for us with our limited physical brain to understand it, we got to stretch it out so we can separate yesterday from today and from tomorrow. In order to separate those, we have to have present moments. And that's what really explains time, because what I was shown is that the linear time progression is put together by individual separate frames of present moment, one stacked after the other one, going from the present yesterday through the present on into the future. And these present moments, there's some science to this, and that is that they have a similarity to a square wave generator. And electricians and people that know electronics, they will understand what that is, because it creates a sine wave that spikes, move over a little bit, and collapses to nothing. You move over a little bit, spikes, move over, and collapse to nothing, and this continues and continues. So these present moments, they're stacked right here, and they spike. You have a present moment. The next one, to move over a little bit and collapses. And then it spikes again, move over and collapses. Spikes again. These are the present moments that is stashed one after the other. And when we look at those, they are separated by a distance, which is equal to Planck's distance. Or that is 1.6 times 10 to the minus 35th. Or put it in something that you can understand, is that 10 to the minus 20th of the distance of a proton from one edge to the other edge of a proton. You know, the proton in the middle of the atom, yes. That's a pretty small thing.
Mm-hmm.
That only 1/20th of that is the size of the present moment and also the distance between it. There's some science to this, actually. Max Planck, he came up with this one. And I have been talking for 10 years now about that these present moments create a linear time. And I haven't heard anybody talk about it until, I think it was last year, I heard a Russian scientist that came out and said that his equations on the blackboard saying that it appears as our linear time is composed of individual frames of present moment. He didn't talk about the distance between them or anything, but that's what I deducted. And when I saw this in the download, I didn't see anything about Planck because there's no timestamp on it or anything like that. But I compared it to science that I can understand, and it appeared that there was the distance of the Planck distance, or very tiny like that. And when Planck talked about the distance when there was nothing, that made sense to me. So I could see that being the distance between the present moments.
All right. Now I want to know more about this fellow who created this time device that we're going to look at a little bit later.
Yeah.
First of all, who is this person?
The guy's name was Stephen Gibbs. He lived in Omaha. I lived in Omaha, so I got to know him. And then he moved to Kansas after I went to Tucson. He built these time travel, I guess I should call it devices, because it's not really a machine. There's really no moving parts in it. It's just a time chip, and I'll show you the what it looks like in a second here. And he told me very clearly, this is not a toy. If you're going to get this one just to play with it, he says, just let it go. Because there's some serious danger with it if you don't understand it and understand where you are going with it. Because there are people that has bought the machine and they're missing. So one incident of that, and there are several like that, and that is that with a young man, he was going to college, he was living at home with his parents, and he bought the device and he got it up to his bedroom and second floor, and he was up there, and in the evening his mom went up to tell him that, hey, come on down, there's dinner downstairs, so come on down. But he wasn't in his room. And in the middle of the bed, the time travel device was sitting there, the time coil was sitting next to it, and the magnet was right there in the bed. So she didn't think much of that, and she thought, oh yeah, he left. He went out with friends. But he didn't come home that night. And that had happened before too, so she didn't worry about it until she found out that he didn't go to school the next day. Now she started wondering. And in about a day after, they filed a police report saying, I don't know, he's probably off somewhere, but we should file a missing person report anyway. And they did. The cops came out. And in a situation when somebody's missing like this, the cops turn squarely on you. They start wondering, hey, did you kill him?
Mm-hmm.
And bury him in the backyard? So the parents became a target because he didn't show up anywhere. And he has not showed up ever since. Well, I shouldn't say ever since, but until probably about 10 years ago when I talked to Stephen last, maybe 7, 8 years, I asked him about that. Has any of those people missing shown up? And he said, not that I know.
So tell me more about Gibbs. What's his background? What's his training? How did he come upon creating this device?
Well, I guess there's a term for people like him. They're called mad scientists.
Mm-hmm.
He is the guy that they have no specific scientific education, but they read patent reports and scientific reports that look interesting, and then they go do what it says. And they have strange experiences with it. There are a lot of people like that out there, especially, hey, there's a guy in Canada 50, 70 years ago. He created a carburetor that get 200 miles per gallon. A mad scientist. Charles Poe. Go ahead and research him. You'll find him. And the people like that. And Stephen Gibbs was one of those people. But he was into the electronic part. And he learned quite a bit about electronics by putting things together and get like electrocuted and, experimenting.
All right. Listen, I'm going to take a quick time out, Augie. We'll come back and we'll continue to delve into this time shifting device and its inventor, Stephen Gibbs, and your experiences with time travel right here on Strange Planet. Stay with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. We're back with Augie Nost, and we're talking about Stephen Gibbs, the creator of this time device, self-taught, mad scientist, Tesla wannabe. And so how did you meet him?
I was introduced to him by a lady in Omaha that has written something like 100 books, and several of them on time travel. And if you, it's Patricia Ress. Google her. She's got a website. Several of the time travel books of hers are on that website. And she introduced me to him. And it was kind of an accident because I was busy at the time and I didn't have time to go meet anybody, but I did anyway. And I'm glad I did, because that turned me on to a totally different, probably, timeline.
Ah, here she is. Yes, she's written with Nick. She's contributed to a book with Nick Redfern and Stephen Gibbs and Tim Schwartz. We know all of those names. Stranger Than Fiction, the true time travel adventures of Stephen L. Gibbs, the Rain Man of time travel, by Patricia Griffin Ress, R-E-S-S.
That's her.
Beyond Earthly Knowledge, The Library Upstairs, on and on it goes. All right, so Patricia introduced you to Stephen Gibbs. Was he nervous about? Well, he told you, he warned you about it, about this device, but was he reluctant to share this information with you, or was he transparent?
No, he was making the device for people that wanted to buy it. In fact, Art Bell bought one. And I remember on the air one time, in fact, I think that was probably the time that I was on the air with Art. He called me and had me on. And he said something to the effect that I have the device here. It's sitting right over there, but I haven't dared to turn it on yet. So maybe he did and maybe he didn't. I'm not sure.
I seem to recall, because I was listening to Art Bell in the early 90s, and I seem to recall hearing him talk about that one time. And I don't know that if he ever did try it. Okay, so are we ready? Do we want to let's have a look at it?
Yeah, we could do that. Stephen Gibbs actually was on Art Bell's show probably 5 or 6 times. So they got to know each other really well, and they became good friends, actually. And the thing about it is that, let me take about 30 to 35 seconds here and explain a little bit about timeline, because that can really help and make people's life better. If we understand timelines, you know that whatever you did yesterday and you're doing today is going to be very predictable going into the future. If your life sucks right now, you don't have to stay in this timeline. You can make a major decision and go and do something else. That is one way of creating a new timeline. And I've done that several times. And pick a date, New Year's Eve party a year from now, and visualize what you want to have successfully accomplished in your life at that time, and go back and visit it every day. In my book on spiritual science, I show exactly how to do that. And there's another one, and that involves a parallel timeline. You are in several timelines, and start visualizing yourself doing something different that you love to do and love to have in your life, and start visiting that without the date on it. And if you do that often and strongly enough, you could flip over into that parallel timeline. And the thing about that is that if you do, you may not be able to remember what you had in this one. And if your life sucked, you probably don't want to anyway. But you could find yourself in that parallel timeline where you have created it in your mind the way you like to see it.
But is it going to be a dramatic shift in timeline? So, for example, you go to bed one night and you've got your lovely wife beside you, and you've got your 2 kids that are about to go into university, and you've got you got a used car in the driveway, and you got a mortgage or whatever. You wake up the next day, you're not going to have a different family, are you?
Unlikely, very unlikely. I wouldn't say no, but very unlikely. And I think if you have everything you want and you love in your life right now, don't do anything different. Keep it. Keep visioning the good things that you already have in your future, and that's the timeline you're going up. If you have things that you don't like, start visualizing with that missing in the other timeline. Okay. And what you are visualizing in that timeline, that's what usually will show up.
All right.
Because thoughts are things, you place them into the quantum existence, and it's there. You can go there and attach it. And that's what the theory of inflation is within quantum mechanics. That is, whatever you have placed into the thought of it and visualized it, you thought of it, placed it into the quantum existence. Because of that theory of inflation, that represents, like, you can take that as a potential and bring it into the physical world with you, and it becomes real.
Quantum inflation. All right.
Yeah.
That's the
theory
good, that's the good kind of
inflation.
inflation. We don't like the other kind of inflation. That's the good kind.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So let's have a look at this device. Are we ready?
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. First of all,
and describe everything if you can in detail, because some people are just listening and they're not seeing the visuals.
Yeah, there is 3 components to it. This is one of them. It's what's called a time coil. You put that around your head at the level of the third eye, so that it goes through the middle of your skull. This one sets up a electromagnetic field around your head. Stephen had some pictures. It was taken with Carillion photography, so he could see how the field was, and it looked like it was flat on top, and then it came out in a bowl like this. So it kind of conformed to what the time coil looked like.
Let me just explain what it looks like for those just listening on the podcast and not watching on the Rumble channel. It's just kind of an elasticy coil, almost like something some people would have attached their keys to, so that they can stretch it and open a door and then put it back in their pocket. But it's a loop. It's a closed loop. A stretch coil.
It's a closed loop that is attached by a wire to a black box. I'm going to show you in just a little bit.
Okay.
And when you put this on your head, you get the electromagnetic field around your head.
Okay.
And then we have an electromagnet. Looks like this, looks like a T. The handles on the T is small, but the magnet itself is very strong. And I could put it down here and put maybe a coin. That's right, coins don't. But put something steel,
yes,
about a foot away from it, and it would say bang. It would just get pulled right into the magnet.
All right. It's a bundle of
So,
tightly copper wire around.
Yeah. The magnet is wound with the wires, and then it is at the handle, it is attached to the black box also.
Yes.
With an electric cord.
Okay.
And this magnet is taken and put against the solar plexus, right below the sternum, just right there in the middle of your chest.
Okay.
Put it with the magnet in and the handles out.
Right.
Away from you.
Okay.
And that is I don't know exactly what would create the importance of having it right there at the solar plexus. There's something to that, and Stephen may have talked of that, but I'm not so sure exactly what he said.
Well, you've got the pineal gland, the third eye, and then I don't know, is there an important chakra or something right there where the solar plexus are?
Yeah, that's probably the connection. And then we have the black box.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you listening out there and not seeing this, I will try to explain it. It is about 2.5 inches wide, about 6 inches long, and about 5 inches wide, I guess.
Wide, yeah.
So, and then it is kind of like a mini radionic computer. Now, this one is pretty simple. I used to have a radionic computer with, I think, about 28 dials to it that you could do just about anything with. But this one's got 2 knobs. And when you plug it in the wall, and then there is a red button that you flip the red button on.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. And then there is another button, actually a flip switch.
A switch.
For the 2 knobs to dial.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one is for a well, as you would have on a radionic computer.
A well?
What
do you mean, a well?
Yeah, this well is for healing. And tuning into somebody at a distance.
All right. It's like a hole in the box.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a hole in the box. And
about the diameter of your big finger, I guess.
Yeah, about that. And now there is on one side of them, there is a big plate. The top of the box is a big plate that when you tune it, you rub this plate with one hand as you turn the knobs. Oops, I got it backwards here. Turn the knobs really slow with the other one until your finger sticks. When your finger sticks, that's the position you want to keep the knob in. And then you turn the other knob as you move the finger back and forth until it sticks again. This is how you fine-tune the body to the device or the machine.
And what frequency or what is the box emitting? Do we know?
There is a time chip, and he said that don't open it up. He says because it is black boxed. He doesn't want anybody to know what's in it. So he He says, if it'll quit working if you break it open. And I never did that, but I imagine there are people that did, so they could get their hands on the time chip, possibly. But I don't know the frequency that is tuning out. I have never checked on it, and I don't think Stephen even talked about that.
But there's no danger of getting an electrical shock or anything, is there?
Not from the box. If you have a electrical cord that is broken, yeah, don't touch it. But for if it is all put together, you really can't get shocked from it. I used it a lot, and it's.
And what kind of power does it take? What is it, like 15 volts, or what is it? 30 volts?
You plug it in the wall, 110. You just plug it in the wall.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is something that Stephen. This is the early version of it. Now the later ones, they look slightly different. They look a little nicer, especially the magnet. He's put together a little nicer on the later ones. But I'm sorry to say that about a year ago he died, so he is no longer with us. So these now are becoming more like, I don't know, collector's items, I guess.
All right.
They're hard to find.
All right. So once you've got the coil around your head, you've plugged in you've got the magnet pointed towards your solar plexus, and then it almost seems like you need two people to operate. Are you able to operate it by yourself?
Yeah, you can do that by yourself.
Okay, and then with the other hand, you're gonna.
You can hold the magnet with one hand, and then when you put the black box down, you can turn the knob a little bit and strike the strike plate. Turn the knob a little bit until the fingers stick.
Right.
And you can actually do that by yourself.
Okay, so once you do that, then what are you supposed to do? Do you have to focus on something, or?
I'm going to put this down for now. So that's when I didn't get anything done until I started manipulating my brainwave pattern. And that's where I would go into meditation. And I would tell myself, this is something that I did. And
Oh, you froze on me there. I don't know if you can hear me, Augie, but you're frozen. Oh, you're back now. Now you're back. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So you began to meditate. That's your pickup.
Yeah. I visualized a black background with a white number 7 on it. And I knew that would be the brainwave frequency I would be looking for. And then I just, there's a way to dull the mind really fast and cross your eyes a little bit, because now you give the mind to do something that it doesn't take thought to do. So I did that, and then the mind goes dull. And then the brainwave pattern come down, and you just sit there. And you can visualize where you want to go, or what you want to know. I think, though, that when you are experimenting with this, let's say that you want to go back and see what it was like in Egypt 3,000 years ago. I wouldn't do that, because back then we didn't have electricity. We could plug this machine in. I would be a little careful with where I would go. I wouldn't go outside of my capabilities.
Is that why you think people disappear? They go back in time?
I am sure, especially that young kid. He was experimenting. Everything was sitting in the middle of the bed. He left the equipment behind and he went somewhere. Normally, there's a safety valve in the universe, and that is that it would bring you back. But evidently for him, it didn't happen. He could have gotten into a position or in a situation where It could have been terminated. You know, you never know what could happen.
So how many, listen, we'll take another time out. We'll come back and then I'll find out where you've gone using the Stephen Gibbs time device. Back with more in a moment. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Augie Nost is the author of Spiritual Science, Higher Consciousness Thinking, and How to Access the Universal Consciousness. And you can check out the YouTube channel at Broadcast Team Alpha. At Broadcast Team Alpha. We're talking about time travel and a time device created by Stephen Gibbs, formerly of Omaha, Nebraska. So you mentioned you were walking down the street in Omaha or Tucson, and you believe you were 6 months in the future because you went to a newspaper box and read the newspaper.
Yeah.
Where else have you gone?
Well,
Froze again. I'll wait for you to come back. You've gone somewhere.
now you're back.
Now you're back, yes.
Okay, yeah, you froze on me too.
Oh, okay. All right, where else have you gone?
Yeah, if people want to know a little bit about the future, I would put them to rest a little bit. I am not worried about the future whatsoever.
Good to know.
Because the future is going to be good. But there is some cleansing.
Froze again.
And that is over. There is things happening that's going to be very quick, and it's going to be good afterwards. The way I have seen it in my timeline. And my timeline involves spiritual things. I didn't say religious. I said spiritual things. Mm-hmm. And if somebody is all embedded in the government cover-ups and the government crimes and things like that, all bets are off. I'm not going to be in that timeline. They're on their own. But my timeline is good. There is a few things that I would want to mention, and that is that twice I've seen it happen. And that is something that I have not been able to get rid of, and that is I would not live on the coast because there are 2 big rocks coming out of the sky in what I have seen, and they create tsunamis that is a little bit more than what people can handle.
All right.
So I would move inland if it was me. I live in Tucson. I feel good as I'm close to 1,000 feet above sea level. I'm okay here. But
Rose.
Something like that, because what I saw in that particular incident was pickup trucks looked a little different. than what they do now. Many of them had no hood on it. They were going from the very tip of the nose in a straight line up to the top of the cabin. That's what many of the pickup trucks looked like. And I don't see any of those here. There is one now being made, but it's not on the market yet. It was just a conceptual thing that was displayed.
How far into the future have you traveled?
Not that far. Few years.
Are you able to, when you travel into the future, are you able to interact with your environment and interact with people?
I just observe, because there is this kind of unwritten law that you don't want to go into the past or the future and change things.
Right, the grandfather paradox.
Yeah, you can create more paradoxes and things can go bad. But there is other timelines going into the future. When I was in Tucson, I also had a radio station that I interviewed Al Bielek 9 times on that radio show. And he is the one that was on the Eldritch during the Philadelphia experiment. And was it 1943, Richard, wasn't it?
Something like that. I remember. Yeah, I've interviewed Al in the past as well. It was,
and there's a lot of evidence that this is real. Think of it. The Philadelphia experiment is classified. All the information on it is classified 80 years after it happened. Do you think the government will classify something that didn't happen for 80 years? No, they wouldn't. That thing happened. So if we look at that I'm considering as evidence that, yes, these things that Al Bielek, or many of the things that he talks about, did happen. And there's more evidence to that this is real. There's a guy named Andrew Carl Seen. Andrew Carl Seen, he came here from, he said, the year 2256. He came here and he had $800. He started investing in the stock market. Couple of weeks later, by that time, he had done 126 trades, never lost any money on either one of them, and accumulated $350 million. The regulator, they're starting looking at this and they said, no, wait a minute, that can't happen. He's got insider information. So they came and arrested him, hauled him to court. And, well, they start looking into him and they found out that the guy doesn't exist. And there no fingerprints, no licenses, no nothing. The guy doesn't exist on paper or in records anywhere. So they asked him, why? And he said, well, yeah, I'm a time traveler from 2256. And I came back here because I looked at the records of investments and I knew who was going to make money. And I came back to play the game and it got out of hand for me. I meant to do it different, to lose a little bit so it looked okay, but I just got caught up in the moment. And so the judge, of course, he laughed at him and he locked him up. And a day later, a guy came with a bail money of $1 million. He bailed him out and they left. And they were never seen since. Now, there's some controversy around this. And many say, oh, yeah, this is just something they made up. You can look at it and I got it written down there. I want to make sure that you go and look at this. You can look at the police record, the Rikers Island. I did. There's a police record. That was about, probably 2 years ago now. I did that. I checked on it. There is a police record of Andrew Carlseen.
How do you spell his last name?
Carlsin. I've seen it spelled with a T in there too, but I think it is SSIN. And now the case is sealed, but they can't seal the name, but they seal the case. So there is a police record of him, and he was, put in jail at Raker's Island, and that's where they kept him. But it's something that people can, just for fun of it, you can go and research also. And there are other people. There is also, while you're looking there, Richard, I can tell you about another really strange case. And there was a tomb in China. There were scientists there. They going to exhume the body. Scientists and geologists were there. Archaeologists were there. And they had this big sarcophagus, stone sarcophagus, with a stone lid on it that looked about that thick. They took the lid off, and there was the guy lying in there. And he had Nike's shoes on. It had been in the ground for 800 years. They also found a little Swiss watch. This is something can be Googled. I haven't done it lately, but it can be Googled, and you can find this guy. And Swiss watch, 800 years ago. Switzerland hasn't been around for about 400 years. It's a very old country, actually.
Right. Amazing.
But yeah, think about that. And another thing that proves that time travel is possible, go to bbc.com/news/July 11, 2018. They're talking with scientists, and they're saying, yes, we can build a time travel device. And this is how we do it in concept. They only talked about the concept.
Right. You had some pictures that you wanted to share with us. I'm going to edit those into the stream later, but you can just bring them up on the side and tell.
Oh gosh, in order to clean up the stream here, I got rid of that page.
That's okay. We'll do that. We'll do that in part 2. We'll do another time travel show. We'll do that with the photos then.
Yeah, that we can do.
All right. Mm-hmm. So what was that BBC story again? bbc.com/news/
the date that you want to look for, just like you said, bbc.com/news/July 11, 2018.
Okay.
That's where they talk about we can build a time machine, is I guess what they called it.
Okay. Well, I'm getting a 404 error. Page cannot be found. Let me see. bbc.com/news/July. I spell out July.
Yeah, July 11.
2018. Okay. Well,
yeah. Now you said BBC, right?
BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation. Yeah, maybe they've taken the page down, but maybe we can find it another way. But I will take your word for it. I will take your word for it.
They probably had some pressure on that one.
Remarkable.
There is a scientist in California. He teaches at one of the universities out there. His name is Bruce Goldberg. You may even have had him on the show.
Yes, I've talked to Bruce Goldberg. Yes.
Yeah.
Years ago.
He teaches time travel.
Ah. And there's also Professor Ronald Mallett from the University of Connecticut. Now he has built an actual device, but he has a theoretical time machine. He says that works on paper, and now he's looking for funding. Mm-hmm. Professor Ronald Mallett, Mallett, I think, or there's one T, Mallet. Okay. Very interesting gentleman. Very nice person.
That's excellent. Yeah.
Well,
it gets really deep when you step out of the box.
Indeed, this has been fascinating. So we'll do a part 2 Augie, and we'll do a part 2 on time travel. And I know you've got a bunch of images we'll share as well for those people who watch us on Rumble. And I look forward to our next appearance on Coast to Coast. We'll do a 2-hour special on time travel.
Oh, hey, that'll be so much fun. You just call, I'll be there.
All right. As long as you're not traveling somewhere into the future.
No, I'm going to be right here.
All right. In the ever-present now. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Augie. Until next time.
You're welcome.
A new Richard Syrett's Strange Planet drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there.